It's one thing to be a startup, but it's a whole nother thing to be a stay-up. If I'm your agronomist and I'm your retailer and I screw up, I lose your agronomy business and I lose your retail business. We evolved to have the most advanced, educated farmers in the world. No question in my mind.
Somewhere between the farm and your plate, the story of how your food is grown got hijacked. Not by farmers, by people who have never touched a seed, never watched a crop fail, never had to explain to their banker why the weather won. People who mean well, but let's face it, they tend to get it completely wrong. My guest today has spent 40 years farming in Saskatchewan dirt, built one of the most respected organizations in Canadian ag retail, and sat in a room full of entrepreneurs while a speaker told everyone that modern farming was poisoning the world. So he went home and he wrote a book about it. Dennis Bulani, fourth generation farmer, CEO of The Rack, founder of Trust Your Plate, author of What a Farmer Wants You to Know About Food. This is that conversation. Welcome to the show, Dennis Bulani.
Hi, it's great to be here, Dan.
We've got a lot of good ground to cover. But I wanted to start with the fact that you're a farmer. When you came on the show here today in the green room, you were talking about all the chaos going on and you're moving this and you're doing that and the whiteboard's full of activity at the retail. Where are we at June 2nd, 2026 on the farm? What are you living and breathing today as a fourth generation farmer?
So living and breathing, I got done seeding a little over a week ago. I only farm about 1,000 acres, so I'm a small farmer because I'm so busy with everything else. And so on my farm, I grow one crop each year. So then I get to focus on the one crop. This
Wow.
year's my wheat year.
Come on.
I can actually tell you what I'm growing in 4 years because that's my rotation. My rotation is a 5-year rotation, but it's one crop each year. It's actually kind of fun because I can focus on wheat agronomy this year.
Dennis,
And
is this something that you came up with? You had a eureka moment in a strategic coach room, or so? How did? Because I don't hear that very often. That you would monocrop one crop in a rotation in a year, but it makes sense.
well, it does. I'm not sure I'd advise it in the average larger farm because my income levels go up and down like a yo-yo. You can imagine the wheat year is a little bit less rewarding than the canola year. Last year was the pulse year. So once every 4 years, I insist on a pulse in the rotation.
Yeah.
And I also grow certified seed. So last year I grew all certified peas, yellow field peas. And of course, I work with a seed grower here in the Biggar area, Wiley Seeds, and he cleans them, and then we sell the certified seed to our customers. Last year, I grew a new variety called Julius, a really amazing yellow pea variety, and it's amazing how the technology changes. So every time I get once every 4 years, okay, so then I spend all winter reviewing what should I grow, what variety should I grow, and why should I grow it, and so on and so forth. And I came across these Julius peas that are a small yellow pea, smaller than almost all other pea varieties, and new genetics, and they turned out to be very well. They probably averaged 75 to 80 across the farm. We fight a battle of Aphanomyces, which is root rot disease in peas, and my research division actually did 5 years of research on that disease. And as a result of the research, I have a lot of confidence in mitigating that disease, so I'm comfortable to grow them.
And what
And
outside of the economics, what does the research say about just having one crop per year, or what did you determine about
well, the
rotation?
research, I mean, good agronomic research says you should have a minimum of a 4-year crop rotation, in your cycle if you can. And the research also says that if pulses are 1 in 4 of those years, that the average yield of all the other crops is probably about 15% higher.
Wow.
And yeah, that's
Not to
true
mention the
story.
nitrogen fixation.
Not to mention the nitrogen and so on and so forth. So a lot of that data actually comes out of University of South Dakota, Pierre, South Dakota. They've got studies down there that they've had crop rotations for probably now 20 and 30 years where they've evaluated, high organic matter, straw residue crops and winter wheat and soybeans and not canola so much there, but they determined that when there was a pulse in the rotation that the resulting crops were about 15% better, and we confirmed that in our own research.
Do most farmers know that from just experience and wisdom, or
I mean,
just your
well,
university folks?
right now it's really frustrating to be a farmer and want to grow peas and know that quite often when they grow them, the root rot takes over and they get nothing. And so there, I would say one of the largest concerns in Western Canada right now is the fact that some of these pulse crops are prone to Aphanomyces root rot disease. And we need, if farmers knew that they could grow them and not get that disease, they would grow them. And sometimes I guess there's so much going on that we forget that a pulse is a critical piece of a good crop rotation.
How do you beat that Aphanomyces?
Well, interestingly enough, we picked fields that had a history of that disease when we do our research trials. And we, of course, seed normal peas, and then we play around with fertility, different levels of fertility. And we played around with, amazingly enough, Treflan. I discovered an article in Australia from 30 years ago where a researcher claimed that trifurulin had an effect on killing or suppressing Aphanomyces. So I said, well, let's throw it in our research and see what happens. And lo and behold, the Treflan treatments had way better disease control. So we replicated that five years in a row, and every year we did it. The highest yields were from a high fertility program with peas, high fertility. I'm talking NPK and S, like something like a, I don't know, 20, 40, 40, 15 side banded ration with the peas. When we did that, and we used Treflan, and we avoided heat herbicide, and when we sprayed manganese and zinc with our Odyssey or our Solo, we actually literally eliminated the problem. We never got rid of it completely, but we actually, in a lot of the trials on average, we went from a 25 to 30 bushel pea crop to a 70 to 75 bushel pea crop almost every time. And it worked out so well that actually that 5 years of research is now published in the American Journal of Plant Science. And so a lot of our customers use Treflan. We sell a lot of Treflan, and we just spray it with liquid on after we seed the peas or just before with the Roundup application for the pre-burn.
So you're getting customers back into peas with this?
Well, we're giving them more confidence, and of course we want to watch their crop rotation. Like a lot of farmers maybe got into trouble because they're growing lentils, Durham lentils, or peas, wheat, canola, peas, and putting them too often in the rotation was probably helping with cause the issues. And then a lot of pea growers, amazingly enough, from what my experience is, they believe, well, I can grow peas, I don't need to fertilize them because they're a legume, and what we discovered was a little bit of nitrogen starter. Sulfur was critical. When we added sulfur to the ration, we improved the yield considerably and the nodulation. So yeah, that's probably our best research we've ever done.
How do you consider this competitive edge of having this research available to you?
Well, in rock petroleum and ultimate yield, we actually have our own PhD scientist on staff. We have 6 full-time research agronomists, and this year, for example, we're doing 12 field scale trials. We have a little 12-foot seed master drill. The PhD scientist, Dr. Aaron Corey is his name. He designs replicated, randomized plot design trials, no different than a university would do. So every trial we do, we could publish if, we could rely on the statistical data. And so we like to play around with whatever problems a farmer has. And this year we have 12 different plots. Uh, The pea one we've done over and over again. We've done the lentil one, and every time we do it, we've proven that good fertility, Treflan, good crop rotation, uh, and manganese and zinc when you spray the peas, all literally doubled the yield in almost every case.
What surprised you the most about doing research?
What surprised me the most was I always wanted my own research division where I could do what I wanted to do. Um, I could take a common problem a farmer had and say, let's test out this theory. So we get some pretty crazy ideas and we throw some pretty wild stuff into some of these trials. The Canola 100 trial, which actually Rob Syke put me, kind of gave me the
Hey, I'm wearing
idea.
my Agritrend shirt today.
Yeah, when he wanted, he was trying for 100 bushel canola, and that's still my goal is to get to 100 bushel on dry land canola. We have gotten to, um, I think about you have to have the perfect year to do it, but we have gotten in Western Saskatchewan here. We've gotten to I think 96 bushels of canola. And every year we try it. So we replicate different fertility packages, any new technology that comes out, humic acid, and God knows all these biologicals and all these different things. And we have a ration that I call the kitchen sink ration.
Yeah.
And the kitchen sink is if you eliminated what it costs you to grow canola and did everything that the book tells you will increase yield on one treatment, that should be the highest yielder. And actually, every time we throw in the kitchen sink ration, it's never the highest yielder. So we've actually learned a lot from the failure of that. And actually, you can actually overload. Some farmers, they say, "Oh, I'm having a good year. I'm going to throw this shit in and that shit in." And when I'm spraying my foliar canola because it's looking so good, and actually, we determined that too much kitchen sink actually probably depresses the yield.
So is it balance then, Dennis?
Yeah, I think, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is and probably won't do anything for you. We've had, I would say, limited yield increases from all the kitchen sink things that are being sold out there foliar wise. Our best yields have come from a good, strong, balanced fertility ration of NPK and S to start with. And we've played around with top dressing, adding it later, spraying liquid urea and all these other things. And those are maybe fine tweaks, but they're certainly not everything that we would have thought they were cracked up to be. So good, strong, balanced fertility in most cases gets us pretty much close to where we want to be without spending a lot of money.
Do you have any unicorn products that came along and made your toes curl?
Yeah, the the unicorn product that really intrigued me is we called it triple X in the beginning because we didn't know what else to call it. I met a professor in Ontario, Dr. Bill Brown's his name, and he helped me understand what what glyphosate formulations were better than other glyphosate formulations. He's actually the glyphosate king of glyphosate testing from way back when. Dr. Bill's in his 80s now, but he's a real glyphosate expert. And he actually patented a surfactant, and in the US, it's called Hellfire. And the base surfactant in there is one that he patented. And he got talking to me one day and he said, Dennis, in Ontario, when we add this surfactant with human grade manganese and human grade zinc and distilled water, we are mitigating yield drag from glyphosate on GMO soybeans. Like, and I said, "Oh, I didn't even know about this." And back in the first genetic modification of soybeans and canola, Roundup Ready canola, Monsanto never really talked about it that much, but there is somewhat of a yield drag when you spray glyphosate on canola, on GMO tolerant canola. And in the old Roundup Ready 1, and now there's the 2. The 2 is much better. But the Roundup Ready 1 varieties of soybeans and that had to process the glyphosate. And while they did that for 6 days to 10 days, the glyphosate was actually chelating or tying up manganese and zinc. And that was why there was a yield drag. So Dr. Bill took his surfactant, added manganese and zinc, sprayed it with the glyphosate, and essentially the surfactant acts like a bus. It's a carrier, carries the manganese and zinc into the plant because we know that the glyphosate is going to induce the deficiency. Your soil's not deficient, but the plant goes through this shock. So to mitigate the shock, he developed this formula. So I said, well, let's test this out in our research. And so we put it in our research, and I got the wild idea. Well, if it works in glyphosate, maybe it'll help peas, because everybody that sprays peas with Odyssey or Solo knows you spray them and you don't go look at them. Sometimes they turn pretty yellow, right?
Right.
So I said, what the heck? Let's try this on canola, and every time we did it, we got a 10 to 12% yield increase on Roundup Ready canola and soybeans. We actually did soybean trials. So I said, well, if it works there, let's try it with what the heck's happening with Odyssey and Solo when you spray peas. Well, we plant tissue tested the peas, and we discovered that Solo and Odyssey were also causing manganese and zinc issues, tie-ups. And that shock is causing the pea to turn yellow, and therefore. So I said, well, let's one of the treatments, we'll put this stuff in there, and lo and behold, we got 10% out of that. So even in our pea research, we discovered if you add this wild manganese zinc surfactant package of Dr. Bill Brown's, you'll actually increase the yield 10% and maybe not reduce the flashing. But when we did plant tissue tests before and after treatment, we found that we were able to maintain the manganese and zinc levels in these plants. So we made our own product, and now we sell a lot of it. We call it Rogue, and we've since refined it through our research. We make our own Rogue here at in Biggar. We have a formulating plant and a bottler and everything, and we make distilled soft water. Has to be soft water. 20% of this surfactant, which is called Hitman. We labeled it Hitman, and then we put in manganese, animal grade, like high quality manganese, high quality zinc, no impurities. And then we also add cytokinin and auxin and a little bit of boron. And like in our research, these are the things we discovered. And so then we developed that product, and it works so well in peas that most guys that spray peas want to use it. And I said, well, let's try it in canola with Liberty Canola. And we tried it with Liberty Canola, and a lot of our research showed that we increased the yield of Liberty Canola with this product. So we saw a lot of Rogue now, and a lot of it goes into Liberty Canola because there's so much of it grown. I wouldn't leave home without it. And so, yeah, that's probably the most unique product that's come out of our research that I have actually, a lot of people advertise spray this and spray that, and it's science backed, but we actually have the research, replicated research to show you that when we use this product on these plots, we actually did get a positive economic response.
Is that
So,
why you wanted the research to make products?
no, not actually. This was a side thing of it. We do the research to we want to have the best agronomy, and I started the research because it was frustrating for me. Actually, I don't know, people don't know this, but my degree is in animal nutrition,
Oh,
animal science.
oh.
I'm actually an animal. My first career was animal science in the feed industry, balancing beef and hog rations. And my interest in nutrition's always been my most intriguing thing that interests me. And so I was always interested in animal nutrition, hog, beef, cattle, poultry. And what I learned in the feed industry, then when I became an ag retailer, I never thought I'd go to university to get an animal science degree and then sell gas, but that's what I do now. uh, I realized that balancing a ration for beef, cattle, and hogs was not completely different at all than balancing a ration for plants. And as a result, I realized that holy crap, when we need phosphate for our beef cattle or copper or zinc, the number one deficient thing in our native grasslands is copper and zinc. So most beef cattle farmers supplement their cattle with high C and Z, they call it, mineral, right? High C and Z mineral is high copper, high zinc mineral for beef cattle because it's a micronutrient that's quite deficient in prairie soils. And so the similarity, I mean, an animal processes them different, but at the end of the day, when you balance an animal ration or you balance a ration for wheat or canola, there's really no difference. The science is not different at all. And so most of our trials are fertility based where we tweak and we play around with zinc. We've gotten some phenomenal responses out of zinc last year in our research on winter wheat and fall rye. Like we got, I think, a 15% yield increase on I don't remember if it was the rye or the winter wheat last year on our research trial. But the zinc, just adding a little bit of zinc, we increased the yield. I think it was 15 bushels.
So are farmers more profitable dealing with you then?
I would say they are because we take the data and we give it to our agronomy, our in-field agronomists that work with our growers. And a lot of our nutrition recommendations uh, get tweaked with we learned something new in research, and we're more confident to recommend zinc, knowing that it's going to make the farmer money. It's one thing to say, well, we think you need zinc, so use it. And a lot of times with micronutrients, farmers, the soil test says you need some zinc, so you throw it in, and the farmer says, oh, I don't know if I've seen any difference, yada, yada, yada. So it's usually more important to put it in a replicated trial where statistically you can say it actually did something. And then that gives our agronomists the confidence to build a ration to help a farmer reach his target yield. So I feel that we're a little more up to date with the nutrition of the soils in our various areas, and we in our retail network we work with everything we work from with gray wooded all the way to sand. So I think just about every soil type's in our market area, and so that's given us good experience with the various issues.
If you love animal nutrition, how the hell did you end up selling gas?
It's crazy. So I worked for Eli Lilly Elanco Animal Health Division,
Okay.
selling in-feed additives for beef cattle, poultry, and hogs. And then my dad wanted to sell the farm, and I said, well, I don't know if I want a farm. I really like working with Eli Lilly Elanco, but I don't want to give up the opportunity. So I think what I'll do is take over the family farm. And at the same time, I continued working for Elanco. And then on my farm, I said, well, gee, I want to balance the ration for my wheat. This is be 1984. There was no blending plant in my market that would blend. I went in, I said, I want sulfur and potash for my wheat crop, and the fertilizer dealer looked at me with crossed eyes, and he said, number one, we don't have bulk. We only have it in bags. And there's
Wow.
two kinds of fertilizer: stubble fertilizer and summer fall fertilizer.
I see.
So I said, holy crap, I'm going to use a lot of fertilizer and I want bulk. So then I realized the opportunity to build a business that would focus on plant nutrition. And so then I started Bulani Agro back then, which was an ESSO agency.
Was entrepreneurship natural for you or was it inherited?
No, well, my dad was a farmer. Uh, I don't know that I I don't know how that all came about really. I think I always like to march to the tune of my own drum and try and solve problems. And there's nothing more gratifying, and I'm sure everybody would agree with me that if you can develop something and help somebody make more money or grow more bushels or do something better, that it's really gratifying when they come in and say, "Thank you, you really helped me here." And so the satisfaction or the reward of helping somebody solve a problem is probably the driver of this.
Is that the number one trait of an entrepreneur?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say. some entrepreneurs, this is funny. You're asking me this. I'm a little bit controversial. Some entrepreneurs say, "Well, I've developed 6 startups. I develop a business as a startup and then I sell it, and
Yeah.
that's entrepreneurial." And I say that is entrepreneurial, but me, I've been in this business 42 years. I'm a stay up. And there is a big difference between a startup and a stay up, because a lot of startups, it's easy to start something up, but go through the cycle of even ag retail and look at all the failures we've had amongst the successes and say, you know what, it's one thing to be a startup, but it's a whole nother thing to be a stay up. Because to be in an industry and be a stay up, and this probably goes to farmers too, is staying up isn't always that easy.
You never built to sell?
No, I didn't. That was never my dream. Still isn't today. That's why I like it to be staying in the family. My daughter Cassandra is taking over the company, and I would hope that I like small. I like dealing with small. I like dealing with the owner of a company. Actually, it's fun, and so I like to see small. I'm always cheering for the underdog, and I think small entrepreneurial businesses, regardless of what industry they're in, are usually a little more down to earth, a little more practical, and probably have a goal to truly help their customers have a great experience and a positive outcome, as opposed to chasing money.
Well, you've dealt with a lot of suppliers over the years, hey?
Oh yeah, yeah,
How has that been?
a lot. I've seen a lot come and go, and I would say that the most important part of ag retail is our suppliers. Um, a lot of we focus on making sure our customers have a great experience, but we actually just had a supplier night in January where we have a special event where we thank our suppliers for taking such good care of us. Well, the supply chain couldn't operate without a great relationship between the ag retailer and the suppliers. So there's always issues in the supply chain shortages. Well, today what was happening, we were short curtail M in barrels.
Okay.
Now, curtail M is a great product if you have sow thistle and Canada thistle.
Yeah.
It's very safe on wheat, and of course you got to spray 10 acres a jug. And it's you know when you fill a
Oh.
120-acre sprayer, that's 12 jugs, right?
Yeah.
If it's in a barrel, you turn a valve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even little things like that to make life easier, and bulk chemical and stuff is, I think, critical. And having a good supplier and good forecasting is a part of that. So if I can forecast with my supplier, New Farm in this case, that we need curtail in drums and we need 400 of them or whatever the number is, that they actually will fill them and make them available. Because if we don't talk to our suppliers about our forecast, then of course we run out of things like curtail M and drums.
Who was the best you ever dealt with, and who was the worst, and why?
Oh wow!
Come on, you can tell
You know
some
what? I
stories.
think it. I think it quite often. I think it usually comes to the person, the representative of the company, not so much the company.
Yeah.
So I would answer that question and say we've had good reps and maybe not so good reps, ones that care and ones that don't care over the years. I can't think of any. I can only think of the really good ones, and boy, there's been some great ones that have now moved on or have moved up. So that's a difficult one to answer.
What was
Um,
good about them?
they understood our business. They were proactive. They returned phone calls in a timely manner. Uh, Believe it or not, that's a big deal nowadays. You phone a rep, and some reps are more worried about going to the lake on a Friday afternoon, and always the problems arise on a Friday afternoon, like today, right?
Bad time to have a
And
podcast.
if you can't get a hold of your rep on a Friday afternoon, uh, and they don't return your call till Monday, that can be a real issue, because of course our farmers are right now spraying balls to the walls all weekend. There's good spraying conditions right now for a lot of our customers today. So we got to be there.
How do you view this hierarchy with the farm and the research and the retail? Which is for which is first, which is last? What would you, if you had to throw one overboard or keep one you never let go? How do you see that?
Well, I think what the question you're asking me is, are we an ag retailer that offers agronomy, or are we an agronomy company that offers also ag retail? And I would say we're an agronomy company that offers ag retail. And that's maybe a different way of thinking about it. Uh, we urge all our staff to think agronomy first. What's the right recommendation? The seamlessness of making a recommendation and then helping coordinate the delivery and supply of that same product because we're a retailer, I think makes for a better overall customer experience because we have hands on both. Now, some agronomists say, oh, well, you're a retailer, so you're not ethical. You might recommend something just because you make money. And that, in some cases, some people may be like that. My standards are much higher than that. And my answer is, if I'm your agronomist and I'm your retailer and I screw up, I lose your agronomy business and I lose your retail business. So the real question is, who has more to lose? The independent agronomist or the agronomy company that's also a retailer? And I would answer, we have more to lose, so we have more on the line to make sure we perform. And as a result, my answer is, I think to be a good agronomy company, being also a retailer is an advantage.
Why didn't you grow the farm?
I didn't grow the farm. Well, I'm probably not the kind of guy that necessarily watched the corn grow, but um, I I'm a bit of a social person, and I get more satisfaction out of trying to help other people solve their problems. And so I'm more wired to try and help other people with their problems. And I view the farm as keeping my in touch with reality, I guess, as part of it. I've always viewed my farm as maybe a bit of a research portion of, well, before I had my own PhD scientist on staff, all the research happened on my farm. And I remember I remember way back when variable rate was the deal. I had the first variable rate floater in Canada back in 1991. I had a 6 bin Loral that could variable rate 6 products off of a map, and we didn't have GPS. We used what was called dead reckoning. But so I went out with 3 wheat varieties in my floater, and it was Columbus wheat on the hills, Katepua wheat on the mid slopes, and Laura wheat in the valleys. And I put it in the floater, built a map, and variable rate broadcast seeded wheat. And of course, when it came up, the Laura wheat is bearded, and Katepwa and Columbus were not bearded. So most of my neighbors thought I'd lost my mind because, when it was heading out, it looked, what the heck's going on here? Like there's bearded wheat on the low spots, and you know, but it was an experiment to match variety to microclimate. Learned a lot from that actually, and so yeah,
Wow.
so uh, technology like that, and even today now, we have a lot of farmers that variable rate their seeding rates. I believe that variable rating canola varieties is something we're overlooking. A lot of farmers come in and say, I want the highest yielding variety. If it's Liberty Link, last year it was 340. Everybody wanted 340. And I said, well, why don't you put the 340 in the valleys and buy a less costly variety and put it on the hills, because your hills aren't really going to yield big anyways. Like they'll yield, but of course that's a difficult thing to do because now you have to build a map, and then you have to now put another tank on your air drill if you have one, and now you're horsing around. So the logistics of it, I would say that type of technology is available, but failing because the logistics of getting things done and getting seeds in the ground on time always trump little tweaks like two or three different varieties of canola and getting it right and loading a map and all those things.
Does variable rate pay?
Variable rate certainly does pay. I would say the number one paying variable rate off the cuff is variable rating seed population. You can actually measure how much money you save before you even go out in the field. I think variable rate, what I learned from all my work with variable rate nitrogen is that actually the land varies the rate of nitrogen for you. And a lot of times I found myself building variable rate maps for nitrogen that were literally a flat rate because there was already more nitrogen in the low spots and less on the hills. And so I found that variable rate was much more impactful with soil building phosphate, copper, and zinc. If you know you have phosphate deficiency, and believe it or not, a lot of our farmers do not use enough phosphate. And so if you were to go on a program and soil build phosphate, then you would certainly want a variable rate map, especially with the phos price today. I think it's like 14. What the heck is phos today? $1,245 a ton or 13. It's just crazy.
What's urea at?
Urea today is 1340 a ton
No
retail.
shit.
It is. Yeah. It's the first time in my life, 40 years of business, where anhydrous is the same price as urea
That's the summer fill?
or phosphate.
1340?
Well, summer fill is coming down.
Yeah.
I don't know with the Strait of Hormuz issue. I think right now I would say confidently that the summer fill might be in the 800s. The way it looks today, to me, I'm hoping it gets down to the sixes, but that war in the Hormuz Straits is going to affect us quite dramatically. Interestingly enough, at our retail, we had some of our urea got out of the Strait of Hormuz before we brought it in. So actually, some of the last urea cars we're unloading last week were from Qatar.
Well, they
So
go as fast as a bicycle, so it takes a while to get
yeah,
here.
yeah. So if you think about it, that summer fill program, and Canada has to import urea now. Like as a retailer, I've never had to import before. I always bought domestically, and I still prefer to buy domestically because it's handled less. But we've been literally forced to import urea now for 2 years in a row. And our plan this year is that we will be buying import urea if we have to. If we think the price is right in July for early fill, some of that will be import urea. Now, maybe it'll import from the US, but the US urea market's impacted by NOLA, which is impacted by Qatar. Most of the imported urea coming into Canada, if it came from the Middle East, comes out of Qatar. And you can watch where it comes out of Qatar on a ship and makes its way over to New Orleans and then up to St. Louis and then onto a rail car and then right into Biggar, Saskatchewan. And that can be painstakingly painful because actually I still have 3 cars that have not unloaded as of today that I don't want to be stuck with.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
What are you seeing? What are you seeing in budgets? What are you seeing in commodity prices? What are you seeing in geopolitics? What are you seeing the most? What are you watching most?
geopolitics by and large. I mean, yeah, normally you can analyze the market and say, yeah, we should fill now or we should buy now if we're farmers and we want to buy our nitrogen now. I would say that's going to be up in the air this July. If the early fill numbers in the 800s, I think farmers are going to resist. And the question is, do we then buy? Because if it's 800 and it drops to 650, that's a big hit, right? Especially for a retailer like myself. If we bring it in and we hope farmers are going to buy $800 urea and they don't, and the market does fall come November, for maybe the war will settle, right? So that's a big risk. So we're going to be pretty risk averse and what our summer fill looks like, because we don't we're not going to speculate bringing in urea and hoping somebody buys it for $800. Unless a farmer's there ready to write a check and we're convinced he will, we won't fill. And
Who's
that can be
hurting?
risky as well
Yeah.
because it's the only business I know of where you can go bankrupt doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So The safe thing might be, well, let's not buy urea right now if it's 850 a ton. Well, guess what? If you don't buy it at 850 a ton and somebody else does, and then it goes to 950, now you're out of the market.
Is anyone going to be short though ever really of nitrogen they want?
Well, there was this spring it was short. There was no question. We are really good because we have the import terminal, and our forecasting is impeccable. I think we've tried to get on the phone and talk to our customers. What do you need? What are you going to do? Well, this spring it rained a lot in our most of our market, and so I was actually driving B trains last week delivering urea to a farmer, and he said, "By the way, I hope you have more urea. Since it rained, I actually turned the dial up, and I haven't told anybody yet." I said, "Well, like what? You think you're gonna like when you run out of what you pre-bought, it may not just be there for you. I'm not gonna buy $1,200 urea and hope somebody buys it. So we need to plan this." And so actually, I talked to him. I went back to the office and I said, Farmer X wants another 120 ton of urea. Can we get it? And so we scrambled and we actually bought some from a retailer in Alberta that was long. So, just enough to cover him off. So we can react quite quickly if we do good forecasting. I would say the number one reason to being a successful retailer is, aside from a good customer experience, is forecasting. If you can't forecast, you're not going to be in the game long.
Farmers love Trump, but he sure stirred up a hornet's nest, hey?
Yeah, he did. Gosh, I think it's a bigger picture than what we see on the news media. I think there's something more, much deeper. This is only my theory. Do you have a theory?
I do.
Yeah, my theory is that he's resetting a bit of a world order, and it's really, and we're kind of the shrapnel. That all this other stuff is a bit of a shrapnel. That a global reset is more what he's got in mind, and I think big picture, his goal was to take control of the choke points in the world. Number one, the Suez Canal, which he did first. Number two, the choke point of Venezuela, all that oil, making sure that he had some control over it. And of course, number three is now the Straits of Hormuz and making sure that he has some power over that. And I think those three things alone give him a pretty good card deck to play with in competing with China. And I think that's the real picture.
Yeah. I'm with you on that for sure. Um, and what do you see going forward? Like you say, most of the boats are just arriving now. The boats haven't stopped coming really. They just got to where they're going. What's going to happen next?
Yeah, well, I mean, the choke point is summer fill with urea is going to be an issue until that Straits of Hormuz is settled. So if there's no opportunity for imports out of the Middle East, that's going to impact the urea market, no question in my mind. That until that Strait of Hormuz thing is settled, I think we're going to be, if it doesn't settle for till Christmas time, we're going to be looking at $800 urea, maybe more, because it won't be coming out of there.
Are farmers making money?
Well, interestingly enough, in the last month, a month ago, I would have said, "Boy, it looks tight." The budget on wheat looks tight unless you can grow 80, 90, 100 bushels. My farm usually grows 100 bushels. I don't remember the last time I didn't grow close to 100 bushels of spring wheat. So even at eight, I think I locked in. I forward priced some fall wheat at 820. So 820 at 80, 90, 100 is there's money there. But if you're growing 60 bushels of wheat, I think it's not real pretty.
Is land continuing to appreciate?
Yes, no question.
Who's hurting worse, the American or the Canadian farmer?
The American. Yeah, I think the American farmer by far. Number one, and this is interesting, the Canadian farmer got, I don't know if you remember this, but remember when the crow rate fell, when the crow rate was a
Right.
real problem for Western Canada. When the wheat board fell and the crow rate fell, and the brown envelopes quit coming to Western Canada farmers, because back then there was the LIFT program and all these weird programs where farmers were getting brown envelopes in the mail, checks from the government to subsidize, bad revenues. And I hate to say it, but that actually kept a lot of poor farmers farming. And when Canada changed its policy to help farmers out, it weeded out all the bad farmers. And I hate to say it, but there was a mass exodus of really poor farmers right after the crow rate fell. I seen it myself. The really good farmers that were, soil testing and watching their books and running it like a business, they of course, were the benefactors of that. That never did happen in the U.S. if you think about it. I was at a corn meeting, corn and soybean meeting in Iowa, northern Iowa, Okopoji, Iowa. I was there looking at a floater, and I phone up the local dealer and I said, "Hey, I want to come and tour your dealership." And he said, "Actually, I'm doing a farmer meeting, so why don't you come to the farmer meeting?" So I go to this farmer meeting, and all the farmers were middle aged, like Canadian farmers, and there was an agronomist in the room, and I think DeKalb was running the meeting with DeKalb corn and soybean. And I got talking to the farmers, and I said, like, "What's your crop rotation?" "Well, we grow, it's easy. We don't really think about it. We put beans on the corn stubble and corn on the bean stubble." And I said, "Well, how do you fertilize your corn and soybeans?" "Oh, my co-op agronomist tells me what to do. I don't really know. You'll have to ask him." Uh, have you considered other crops? "Well, we don't have to because we make so much money growing corn and soybeans." And I said, "Well, like in Western Canada, we used to grow just wheat. Like in the 80s, we grew wheat. And we grew a little bit of canola and the odd pea and the odd, and then the crow rate fell and there was no money in wheat. And the entrepreneurial farmers that we are in Western Canada started looking at alternatives, and they started growing lentils and canola and peas and flax and faba beans, and they were scrambling to make money. And in the end, we evolved to have the most advanced, educated farmers in the world. No question in my mind. These Western Canadian farmers were forced to make money, and they did. They developed crop rotation. Isn't it amazing? And here now, you look in the U.S., those poor U.S. farmers, corn, they're not selling their corn to China. Soybeans are under pressure, and they don't know what to do. They're scrambling. They don't have the research to grow another crop. They don't, they're really in a pickle. And so the School of Hard Knocks evolved farmers that are completely resistant in Western Canada. And I don't see this little glitch of commodity prices affecting a lot of our customers, other than they're going to make a little less money. But are they going to lose money? Probably not, because they will adopt and modify. I see a lot of our growers. I think this low commodity price in the last year has really caused a lot of our growers to consider buying those sprayers that only spray the weed. I think John Deere has one, Case has one now. And I'm a chemical retailer. So holy shit, that's going to affect chemical sales, and it will, but in a good way. If it advances farming and helps them make more money, I'm all for that technology. But I was just talking to my neighbor, and he just bought a sprayer with the seeing eye thing on it, and I think he sprayed 80 acres out of 320 with that thing. So he used, 240 acres less glyphosate, and he thinks he still killed all the weeds. He hasn't. Jury's still out on that, but it looks pretty promising. So they're doing these little tweaks to adjust to the economic conditions, and they're able to do that on a dime. If with the technology, the second a Western Canadian farmer's under pressure, what does he do? He looks for the technology that he can weasel his way out of it. And I think that's wonderful. That's why the U.S. farmer's in trouble right now. And I know they got a big brown envelope in February down there, and they expect to keep getting those brown envelopes. And I think that breeds complacency in any industry. So I don't think it's healthy for the U.S. farmers to be subsidized the way they are, to be honest with you.
What is the lesson in the tale of two farms there?
What is the lesson? I think the lesson is if you run a farm, that you need to spend some of your time in the winter researching not just what went right last year, but what you're going to do to improve next year. All the continuous improvement, I think, is necessary. If we make too much money, which like 3 or 4 years ago when canola was $22 a bushel, farmers we're starting to be a little complacent. Oh, this, you know what? I'm going to Arizona for the winter, and I said, are you going to go to the Farm Progress Show or to the crop production show? And said, no, I don't think I will this year. I'm just going to go to Arizona and golf. And but when times get tough, they say, you know what? I've got to go really research what are the little things I can do to grow more canola this year for less money. Constant, and the technology is changing so quickly that we have to do that. And that's another reason why I have my research division, because all these new technologies come along. People make claims that they're going to make our farm customers money, but what we want to test them. And actually, these products don't go on our shelves unless we test them first. So sometimes a new product comes out and we say, well, we're skeptical about it. We'll put it in our research, and if there's a positive response, we will put it on our shelves.
How do you
And
tell
not
someone if something doesn't work?
We have a public display of all our research. It's free, and we report the results, whether they're good or bad. So a new product comes out, and we put it in our research, replicate it. We follow the label to what they're claiming. If there's no yield response, we report there was no yield response. And all these new soil health products are quite popular. So we have one 5-year study right now on soil health products, and we're evaluating 5 years these products. And I'll give you an example. What was the one that came out here? A seaweed one. It was a seaweed extract one. I forget the name of it. I won't use the name on the thing
Sure.
here, but it was a seaweed biological that should improve plant health. You put it in when you spray your canola or your wheat, when you're in crop spraying, and you're going to give you an 8 or 10 bushel yield increase because it was a ground up formulation of a seaweed that they discovered in Greenland.
Makes sense.
This seaweed washes up on the rocks, and sometimes it sits there for 3 years before another big wave brings it back in, and then it starts growing again. And so they take this seaweed and they grind it up, and they experimented with the ground up seaweed, and to see how this plant could survive on a rock in Greenland for 3 years without growing, and then all of a sudden it comes alive again. And they actually discovered some pretty good qualities about that product. So, well, if these biological qualities work for this weed, maybe they can help agriculture. And so in plots in England, they actually got some good responses. And so then we implemented it into canola and wheat. We even had it on my farm one year. And on one farm, we got, I think, a 4 or 5% yield increase with it, replicated. And on my farm, there was no response. So we discovered that these biologicals more research needs to be done, because the biologicals are probably more of a complement to good management than they are a substitute for bad management. So in the right situation, in the right environment, there may be something to them. But should you wall to wall spray your farm with seaweed? Well, I'd say you should play around with it. But if you're not using zinc and phosphate, what's the point, right? Like, a lot of our farmers come in and say, "Oh, I've seen an ad on this new snake oil. I want to spray it. It's $10 an acre." And I said, "John, you don't even use the right amount of phosphate and potash on your farm, and now you're going to pay $10 an acre for some, you know, untested new product because you got excited about some good marketing campaign. Like, come on." And do you know what the two issues in my mind are in Western Canada today? Inadequate soil levels of phosphate and zinc deficiency. Those are the two.
Hmm. So what are you doing about the zinc?
Well, we think that we know that we're learning that zinc uh, is deficient in probably 70% of our soil tests. Majority of our farmers do not buy zinc or apply zinc. And I think as agronomists, we haven't developed the right way to use zinc. Sometimes you see a soil test and it says you're zinc deficient. So then you go and you find a zinc and they find zinc oxide. I mean, you could grind up a car door and spread that. There's zinc in a car
Yeah.
door,
Yeah.
right? But does that mean the plant's going to get it? Are you going to get a yield response by using the zinc this way? And I think learning what forms of zinc to use, when to use them, and why it's important is the secret to where do we use zinc consistently and get our money back from it. So of course you can soil build zinc with go out with a good zinc product and apply zinc for 4 or 5 years, get your parts per million up to 5 or 6, and then you don't have to use zinc again. I soil built my farm on zinc and copper with variable rate. So we actually grid soil tested my farm, and I put copper and zinc into 2 tanks of the air drill, and over a 5 year period built the zinc back up. And now I actually probably don't need zinc, although I use a little bit on the seed, especially when I grow wheat and lentils.
Can you use satellite imagery for that, or you got to use layers and stacks of data for the variable
Well,
rate?
satellite imagery probably not as reliable as if you could grid soil test, which is so expensive that if you really wanted to truly ethically variable rate zinc, you might want to do a grid test. I'm not convinced that there's any other technology than a good soil test because certain areas of your field have good levels. Same with copper, and those metals are so expensive that blanket doing zinc is a bit of an issue now. More and more of our farmers are using zinc, and the one way to get a kick out of zinc is to put a little bit on every seed. It's a low cost item, a product called ProCoat that Yara sells. We sell a lot of it now. We impregnate a lot of fertilizer with ProCoat zinc, especially since our research is showing some positive responses to it. And it's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 bucks an acre, as opposed to you buy granular zinc, you're going to spend $12 to $20 an acre. But there's more zinc in granular zinc. But the issue is the cash flow of $12 to $20 an acre just to soil build the zinc. So zinc is quite popular with some of the phosphates. Croplex that Eurochem sells now is becoming more popular. There's 1 pound of zinc in that stuff. So when you buy your phosphate, you can get maybe 1 pound of zinc every year and maybe build it that way. But to get it, and if you have zinc deficiency and you want a true yield response, you probably have to have a soil building strategy and make sure that there's a little bit of zinc available to every seed. And of course, the zinc response is got to be on the seed. Somebody says, "Well, I'll spray zinc when I'm spraying my crop." Well, no, the crops don't need. It's too late. You don't need the zinc when the crop is being sprayed. You need the zinc the day it germinates, and you need zinc when it's filling, but not when you're spraying. Somebody says to you, "Spray foliar zinc." Bad recommendation because you don't need it then.
Come a long way since the days of the Bulani egg, hey?
Yeah, yeah,
Couldn't get the.
yeah.
Why don't we have enough phos? Don't you buy it and put it on?
Well, because it's always been one of the most expensive of the four nutrients, uh, and a lot of farmers. This is probably the second other good research we've developed. We've discovered that, and I would say this as a rule of thumb, if your initial soil test phosphate level is not about 20 parts per million or better, you are not obtaining the yields your soil's capable of. Seems to be a threshold of 20 to 25 parts per million on at least in Western soils here. that if you have 20 to 25 parts per million of phosphate, P1, there's P1 and P2, available phosphates, I'm talking P1, immediately available in the soil test, that you can't put enough phosphate on to replace that for whatever reason. Like if you took a soil that had 8 parts per million and one that had 25 parts per million and grew wheat on there, the one that had 25 parts per million would yield 15 to 20% higher every time, no matter how much phosphate you used on the 8 parts per million.
Just availability? What's
It's got to
biologically?
be the cycling and the availability, the background phosphate levels. We've determined, we did a 6 year study on this where we used no phosphate for 6 years on the exact same strip, and then 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, all the way up to 100 pounds. And we found that after 5 years, the highest yield was the sweet spot was 40 pounds of P2O5 out of 5 years of testing. And it was huge. It was a huge moneymaker. I mean, talking a lot of money, a lot of yield. We did that. We had that trial at 5 year study was done at north of Unity, and you know what? All I did was replicate a study that was done in University of Nebraska 20 years ago, where they said if your phosphate levels, there's two yield curves, the one where you have low phosphate and the one where you have high phosphate. And when you get up to the 2025 ppm, there's probably 10-20% yield benefit by having your initial phosphate levels high. I could send you the trial. It should be published. I don't know if we tried publishing that one or not, but wow. And it verified what University of Nebraska said way back 20 years ago.
Are you getting guys doing more then? Like, is it easy to, like, once you
It's
can
not
start?
easy because it's so expensive. You say to a farmer, I think you need to be using 40 pounds of phos. You need to start building your phosphate. So if you're going to grow a 50 or 60 bushel canola crop and you're going to remove 40 pounds of phosphate, the 40 pounds you put with it is only going to be mined and shipped to China or wherever, right? So if you're going to recognize that your phosphate levels are an issue, you need to start soil building. So you need to put on more phosphate than you're going to use the year you're going to use it. And
Mm.
over time, it actually doesn't tie up. We discovered that after about 3 or 4 or 5 years, the phosphate starts to cycle and come back in, and you start seeing your ppm levels rising.
Is that because you're feeding the phosphorus related bacteria biology in the soil that makes it available? Is that
I can't explain it, but uh, I think it's just like a bank account. You have to put I'd say you have to put 4 pounds of P2O5 in to get 1 ppm of soil build above crop removal.
hmm,
So for every part per million you want to build, you need to add 4 pounds of P2O5 more than you're going to remove from the crop you're growing.
isn't that simple if you can write a check for it, as they say in strategic coaching?
Well,
Not a
you
problem.
can't do it, and you can't just do it in one year. So it takes time to build it. You cannot, for whatever reason, you can't take soil that has 8 parts per million, add 80 pounds of P2O5 and get the same yield you will on soil that has 20 to 25 and 30 pounds of phos. Can't explain it, but the phosphate's cycling and much more available. And, I heard an ad on the radio the other day. Oh, you put on your phosphate and it's tying up and disappearing forever. It does not disappear forever. It goes into a non-labile and labile pool we've discovered. And there is a sweet spot at the end of the rainbow. I would say instead of buying $10 an acre worth of snake oil because some marketing guy's selling you a full year, you know, cures coughs, colds, and makes childbirth a pleasure. That I would say to the grower, you know what? Do you want to spend $4 an acre paying us to make a variable rate map for you? I think you should take the $4 and invest it in phosphate. That'll probably make you more money long term. But you have to have a strategy around it. And I think you can cash flow a 4 or 5 year strategy around soil building P2O5. That's number one. Number two is none of it's of any value unless you start looking at your zinc and your copper. Uh, no question in my mind. We're getting off on all kinds of subjects here.
So you've made money doing research because you can go broke doing research.
Well, Rack Petroleum spends about 600,000 a year on on replicated research, and we
Where does that come
off.
from? How do you get the money? Not everybody
Uh,
spends 600 grand a year on.
my belief is that more farmers will buy retail products from us, knowing that we're doing this research. That's my hope. And it's free information. We don't charge for it. I had a competitor phone me up 2 years ago and said, "Gee, I heard about your research on I don't remember which product it was. Could I get a copy of that?" And we offer it to our competitors for free. Like this is good agronomic information that I want the world to have. I like to think that if our growers know we're investing money in this, that they will give us the benefit of the doubt when it comes to buying their retail product from us. So I believe it's one of our moats. We think most of our growers appreciate having information they can't get anywhere else, and they appreciate the fact that we report when it fails. A lot of our research, more of our research shows failure than positives. A lot of the products we test don't prove to make money, and that we're hoping it does. If there's a new product comes out, I
Sure. It's
I
great for
want it to
everybody.
I want it to yield more so we can
Yeah.
sell some of it, but there's more knowledge in knowing what doesn't work than what does work for
Yeah.
farmers, especially nowadays. You open up the page, you look at Facebook or any social media, and there's stuff being sold from every part of the world that no research, just wild ass claims that drive me crazy. I think to make a claim as a professional agronomist, we have to know that there is peer reviewed data to say, if I tell you this works, we can tell you that confidently because in our research it worked 95% of the time, and they don't always all work, right?
What are the differences between retailers? You were working with Care a little bit there, running the show. What do you see in the retail world these days?
I see a real there's a massive change in retail the last 1 or 2 years.
Oh wow.
I think a lot of retailers are being weeded out.
Yeah.
Um, we're all under pressure with margins. We buy products and we compete. There's lots of competition. So being a retailer and having the right product at the right time in the right place is one thing. Farmers view some retailers as just a supplier, but some farmers view their retailers as their partners on their farm, making sure they have what they need when they need it, where they need it for a fair price. And that's a challenge. And it's so much of a challenge that it's starting to weed out some of the retailers because if all you're there is to dispense a ton of urea and a pail of 2,4-D and there's nothing else, I don't think you'll be around as a retailer. And that's a challenge even for us. We have to be able to answer questions and provide solutions to these growers. If we can't do that and they don't view us as somebody that will do that, we will not be around.
Is the
There's
farmer changing too? Are they able to access more
the
information?
absolutely AI and social media. Well, social media is doing two things. It's spreading in misinformation, about some things that are of no value, but it's making farmers the knowledge is much more accessible. You look at AI now, you can you can be out mixing a pail of chemical and type it into AI and say, what do I put in first? And AI will answer it probably quicker than a on-staff agronomist can. So I think that's a good thing. Interpreting what the answer is our job. And so I think some of the basic questions AI can handle, but the complex needs that farmers have, they want to be able to talk over the solution and come up with the best possible answer so they can make an educated decision about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. I was just talking to a guy the other day. Here's a good example. Yesterday, we're talking about spraying Vero FX, which is the Bayer wild oat killer. A good product. A lot of people are using these these wild oat type killers. Simplicity is another one from Corteva that kills group 1 resistant wild oats. Group 1 resistant wild oats are a big issue. Everybody's talking about kosher, but group 1 resistance is becoming an issue. So farmers are trying to come up with solutions to kill the wild oats that are resistant to group 1. And so as a result, they're using Simplicity and or Vero. Adama makes a product, Cazado. Cazado is the generic one of those. But the question comes up, should I use ammonium sulfate to treat the water when I use these products? Because these products can be, under the wrong conditions, quite hard on a wheat crop. And the label says, you probably maybe don't need it, but at the end of the day, we know that you will reduce the likelihood of crop injury if you treat the water with AMS. Now, with Vero FX, the new formulation from Bayer, they've already safened it with their emulsifiers, so you don't need AMS. But with Cazado from Adama, it's probably a good idea to use AMS with the same, the generic form of it, because it's a different formulation. And a lot of people don't realize that. And we were just talking to our agronomy staff the other day about this and said, I said, you better bring this up with all your growers because I've seen train wrecks with these products in the wrong conditions. So conditions are so good right now with growing that maybe they might want to consider it. And if they yellow their crop and don't use it, then at least you've talked about it. And that's an example of something, it's a good example of something AI can't answer. Right? So if your retailer observes these things happening, these crop tolerances issues that can happen with any product, and starts to recognize what you can do to mitigate it, that's conversations that a good retailer will have. And that's the sweet spot. If you're not interested and don't care and all you care about is selling a pail of Vero or a pail of, for the lowest price, you won't be around long, I don't believe.
What is your plan for AI?
We are excited about AI. We have a number of our staff taking a high-end AI integration AI course from one of the top AI specialists in the world, I might add.
Oh.
A guy I met at Strategic Coach.
Tell me who it is.
Tom Labate. I always say his name wrong,
Yeah.
but he lives actually now in Costa Rica. But this man is a wizard when it comes to AI. And I had a problem. I'm not going to go into it, but I had a real problem. And I said, how would AI solve this problem? And right now, what we know about AI, I don't know what you know about AI, Dan, but what I knew about AI was I have Perplexity on my phone. I ask it a question and it gives me an answer. That's my AI. But then I talked to Tom and he says, here's what you're going to do. Let's establish a panel of 5 experts in the world.
Yeah.
And let's ask, you have to know how to ask AI the right question. So he helped me do this. He said, establish a panel of 5 experts in the field of crop protection in the world. Here's the problem we have. How would these 5 experts that have written books about it and everything else solve this problem? And it was a personality problem with one of our manufacturers. Actually, it was a high end problem that I viewed needed to be dealt with. And gosh, the 5 experts came back with things I had not thought of. So I had my own professional panel of the top people in the world that know how to deal with the large corporations on how we should deal with it. And then we did a Zoom call with that particular manufacturer with something that was really concerning to me with as to how they were going to market, and we actually solved the problem. So that was an eye opener for me, and Uncle Tom there helped me do this. So I immediately signed up. I didn't take the course because I've been busy farming and seeding and everything, but some of our staff are now taking the course and evaluating how it's going to benefit the rack.
Why did you write a book?
Well, that's a whole nother discussion, but I wrote a book because I was, as you said earlier in the opening, I was at a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and the two hosts uh, had a panel discussion, and they were talking about they got onto canola oil and glyphosate, and the head guy, Joe Polish is his name actually, Genius Network, and Joe Polish says, "Well, I wouldn't eat that sludge," and he called canola oil sludge. And his guest was Kaylee Means, who's now a big gun behind RFK and the Maha movement.
Hmm.
And this Kaylee Means, who knows nothing about agriculture, uh, starts making claims about all the ill will, all the ill things that he believes farmers are doing that are caused his mother to die of pancreatic cancer, actually. And none of them founded in any science or critical thinking at all, just claims. So you get these good talkers on the stage, and all the rest of the people in the audience were going, "Yeah, this is bad." I felt like crawling under the table and dying. But so I didn't think it was the right venue to take them on. So when it was over, I walked up to Joe Polish and I said, "Joe, what you said is actually false, complete lies, and I can prove it." And he said, "Well, then prove it to me." So I went home, and it took me 2 months, and I wrote a 45-page letter to him on what claims he had made and what peer-reviewed data I had to say that he was incorrect in what he was saying. And then one of my friends said, "You know what? Why don't you write a book?" Because I wrote the 45-page letter and I used scientific references. You claim this about canola oil? Well, here's the research on how healthy canola oil is in your diet if it's consumed at regular normal intake rates, and here's the research on it. And there's much more research showing it's a healthy thing to have in your diet. And so basically, you could read my letter, and if you're a critical thinker, you could say there's a lot of evidence backing up the claim that canola oil is an important part of the human diet. And so I said, "Yeah, what the heck? I might as well write a book about this." So then I was bored, and I started writing this book.
What's been your experience writing this book? It's obviously been a big deal.
Actually, the book's turned out to be a number one bestseller on and off Amazon for the last year now. When I do a talk about it, it blips in sales and so on. But I've got the number one Amazon number one bestseller in three categories, actually: restaurant and food, and agronomy, and science, and something else. But uh,
Congratulations. That's
yeah,
amazing.
so uh, it is amazing. But
Are you going to
when you
start
go,
smoking a pipe or something or
no, 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 it has spurred me on to writing another book, which is a novel.
do
And
tell?
I'm almost done my novel,
Give
believe it or
me a
not.
break.
Yeah.
What?
So I'm going to be in the next 5 months. I will be launching my novel, a science fiction novel.
Stephen King here.
It's agriculture related.
This is so cool.
Yeah, and it's actually 60% a true story.
Huh.
In the 90s, I was hired as an agronomist to manage a project in the country of Kyrgyzstan just shortly after communism fell. So I went to Kyrgyzstan and I managed a winter wheat project to get Kyrgyzstan back on its feet to feed their people. And I was the lead agronomist on the project. And all the things that happened to me just after communism fell is what the book's about.
That's crazy. So why is it science fiction though?
So I added a science fiction twist to it because some strange things happened to me over there that were do 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 do.
Come on.
And
This
when
is too
yeah,
good to be true.
it's true. Yeah, it's pretty true.
So it's like historical fiction kind of thing.
Yeah, with a twist, with Fibonacci and chaos theory involved.
Fibonacci. Okay, now you're talking.
Yeah,
That's brilliant. I love that.
the Fibonacci numbers.
Well, I mean, we could go a lot more into the book, and I know you're busy and all that stuff, and I really appreciate the time you took, and I almost feel like it's another conversation, maybe. Hey,
Yeah,
um, we could revisit this soon. What I'm thinking is, you've been doing some speaking.
I've been doing a lot of podcasts, and so since I wrote the book, which I wrote the book primarily targeting two audiences. Number one, I wrote the book for the average consumer that you could read it and it would be an easy read. So I wrote it for the average person living in downtown Toronto that knows nothing about farming or agriculture. I wanted to make it kind of in common language, not scientific, but backed with fact. So after I wrote the book, I hired 4 fact checkers to fact check the book. So if I make a claim in the book that oil is good for you, there's research to say, here's the research on human beings eating canola oil, and here's what happened. They had reduced cardiovascular disease, and there's actually scientific evidence of that.
Hmm.
And so the fact checkers checked the book. I said, if there's one thing I said in the book that was false, it'll kill the whole book because somebody will find it, right?
Yeah.
So that was the biggest cost of writing this book was fact checking it. And so it's been out a year, and I have not had one person say that there's some false things in that book. I've had the anti-farming Maha people challenge me and say it because I in the book I claim that you could buy anything on a shelf in any grocery store and it's not going to kill you. It will not kill you. And they, oh, there's things that'll kill you in a grocery store. I said, well, yeah, if you drink 10 gallons of canola oil, it might not be good for you in one sitting,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But uh, what amazes me is we've never ever in history lived longer. I think the average Canadian lives 84 years now.
Wow. Didn't
The
know it was that high.
longevity,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think it's 84 years in Canadians now. The average life expectancy. Never have we lived longer. Never have we been healthier. Never had we had better choice at I'm like a kid in a candy store when I go to a supermarket store and
Yeah.
all the things you can buy in there. And
Right.
I don't worry about that. I just go in there and whatever appeals to me, I buy it and I love to eat it. And of course, a balanced diet is, I'm not a nutritionist, but,
Well, you are
uh,
though. You are. You're an animal
well,
nutritionist and a plant and
yeah,
soil nutritionist,
there you go. Yes,
and you wrote a book.
but I'm not a dietitian, I guess I'll say.
Okay.
But I know that moderation is everything, and I think the first thing I've learned is if somebody's spouting off in one angle, like some of these wellness industry influencers saying, "Oh, canola oil," and that's all they talk about. That the one ingredient is killing everybody. Well, you know that the flag should go up. Of course, at the end of their post, you can hit on it, and they want you to buy some grass-fed beef jerky that they, you
Yeah.
know. So
Well, you commented on one of our posts the other day about anhydrous ammonia.
I did, yeah, yeah. I was annoyed when
That's
I
how we
see
got on
something.
this show.
Okay, there you go. I did.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm an anhydrous dealer, and some of my customers read that stuff and come back. Oh, gee, I better quit using anhydrous. It's killing the pH of my soil. I said, well, come on now. Or they used to use it on airports, I think was the comment.
Yeah.
Make an airport in Vietnam. That's a true story. So in I think Korea or Vietnam, in order to land their planes on the swamp, they would go out and inject like 2,500 pounds per acre of anhydrous, like literally. And of course, that much anhydrous would sterilize the soil, and then you could compact it, like literally kill the soil, right? Well, that's the same analogy as if you have a headache and you take 2 Tylenol, it'll cure your headache, right? You drink a bottle of Tylenol, you'll be dead.
Yeah.
So it's the same analogy. The dose is the poison. Well, I think the remark on there was if most farmers use 80 to 120 pounds of anhydrous per acre on their land. And I think the suggestion was you could cut it in half and reduce all your pH issues. And I kind of had to agree with that because 120 pounds of N isn't enough to do any of that. And I actually have had growers say, well, gee, I think it's going to kill my land, and I'm sorry, but it's a benefit to your land to use any form of nitrogen, and anhydrous is just one of those forms. And using it diligently and to soil test and to target yield is all the things that you need to do. And whether you're an anhydrous user or a urea user, I mean, our big end users are typically in the thin black or black soil zone. They tend to use their yields are higher where they get more rain, so they're using more nitrogen. And anhydrous is it's a very nice way to use it and handle a lot of nitrogen in an efficient manner. And I think that's a big part of it as a choice. Our anhydrous business is growing, by the way. We have more farmers using anhydrous, not less. Contrary to popular belief, we have more farmers using liquid as well. Dry has been the big boomer. I on my farm use liquid and anhydrous. I use both. I don't use dry because I hate augers and I hate wearing out my air seeder hoses.
Yeah. Fair. Fair.
But I think saying one's better than the other is, unless there's a specific agronomic application that you can refer to, I don't think that's where you should spend your time making the decision. So that's why I referred to that post.
Well, I'm glad that you posted because it got us connected, and it reminded me that I needed to catch up with you and talk about this book. And we could go a lot longer, I'm sure.
I actually never mentioned the other reason why I wrote the book. The other reason why I wrote the book was for farmers to use as a tool when their Aunt Nancy from Vancouver challenges them about what they're doing on their farms. That a lot of times the response to a question from Aunt Nancy from Vancouver is we don't want to get in an argument with these people, so a lot of times we avoid the issue. We change
Yep.
the subject.
Yep.
And as farmers, we shouldn't change the subject. We should say, you know what, Aunt Nancy, I use glyphosate on my farm and it's a benefit to the sustainability of my soil, and here's why. And that information is in the book. So don't avoid that conversation with Aunt Nancy. Tell her she's wrong and give her the reasons why she's wrong, or tell your story. And my book is an easy reference guide to that. And if you don't want to take the book to have at your side to answer Aunt Nancy, it's on trustyourplate.com. You can go on to trustyourplate.com and pick the GMO question, and there's reference to my book and the GMO issue. Some people are anti-GMO. So trustyourplate.com is a real handy website that you can very quickly answer a question from Aunt Nancy when she gives you one and you don't have all the information at your fingertips. So I wrote the book for farmers to use as a tool to talk to their Aunt Nancy, and for consumers to understand. Here's a story that just happened yesterday. I'm a member of AgLink Canada. AgLink is a fraternity of independent retailers, like-minded retailers who believe that we have to be ethical and serve our farmers with the best possible knowledge and so on. And Dean Fawcett is our director of AgLink. So I was talking to him on the phone actually yesterday, and he bought a cabin in BC, a summer cabin thing. And he said his next door neighbor is kind of anti-farmer, anti-fertilizer, anti-everything. And so Dean was out spraying his dandelions with Roundup and fertilizing his lawn on this new cabin. I hope he's not mad I'm telling this story. And his next door neighbor said, well, gee, I don't know about all this. And so then Dean said, well, here, read this book. And he gave his next door neighbor my book. And lo and behold, Dean says last week he went there and his neighbor was out spraying his dandelions with Roundup and fertilizing his lawn. So I said, well, gee, I hope that neighbor will give me a reference and say that the book actually maybe changed his impression of how safe these products can be when used properly.
I think that's great. You're giving farmers something to do, right?
Yeah.
They can take action by sharing this information. I'm glad that you got it all verified too. I mean, I think half of it is just sharing it with them and saying this has all been fact verified. So this is all science, right?
The other thing, Nutrients for Life, Canada Nutrients for Life organization asked me if they could get some of my books to distribute to school teachers across Canada. And so if my book is used in the educational realm, I have a special deal just for that. So Nutrients for Life, I had my books printed at cost, for about $5 a book. They retail normally for $24.95, but for education, if you want want to use my book and give it out to a bunch of school children or use it as a reference, I'll give you a special deal. It's $5 for educational purposes. Nutrients for Life bought 100 of them, and they're distributing them in their soil testing packages for science kids across Canada. Excuse me.
Yeah, and you can buy it
So
on Amazon here, the Kindle edition. I just bought it.
there you go.
And are you going to be updating it and or writing more on this
Uh,
subject?
I can't say I have. I can't say for sure I will.
Yeah.
I don't. I wrote the book, so it's somewhat timeless. Now that I've written the book and been challenged with the most common myths. Do you have more time, or are you out of time
Yeah,
here?
no, I'm good. Keep going.
So the most common myths in consumer agriculture in North America. Number one, that we use too many chemicals that are forever chemicals and they're dangerous. That's a myth. And most consumers believe that when they see a sprayer out in the field, that sprayer is spraying pure chemical because they say pouring it on. And
Right.
I say, do you realize that the average farmer, this is a true story. I've worked this out. If you took a 15 millimeter eyedropper, a little eyedropper from an iodine bottle or whatever, people don't use iodine anymore, I don't know, but a little eyedropper, and you make one droplet with a 15 mil eyedropper, you know how big that water droplet is, right?
Mm-hmm.
1/3 of that droplet is the amount of active chemical the average Western Canadian farmer applies on a square foot of soil a year. If you total all the chemicals up, 1/3 of an eye drop of actual chemicals what hits the soil, what hits the land. That's on an average canola crop. And most people that live in the city think that we're pouring this pure chemical out in it. What they're seeing is, of course, water, which is the carrier of the product. That's a myth. Number two myth, most people think that we add Javix to canola oil. Did you
Mm-hmm.
know that?
I recognize there's a process, but I wasn't sure what's involved. Java,
Well,
bleach it.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
so the canola crush industry needs a wake up call. The engineering people who built a canola crusher, one of the processes they call bleaching. And bleaching is when you crush the canola oil, just like in a meat grinder. You could do it at home, and the oil comes out the bottom. So does the hulls and the black hulls.
yeah,
So it looks like black goop, right? The crushers pour that oil with the hulls through a clay filter, like a coffee filter with clay in it.
yeah.
And you know what comes out the bottom? Pure canola oil. That's called bleaching.
Huh. Why would they call
So
it bleaching?
because it bleaches the canola oil to be pure yellow. But it's filtering, it's not bleaching. And most consumers say, well, they bleach canola oil. They're adding Javix. No.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I thought. I thought that's what made it bad compared to, say, olive oil.
No, it's a filter. It's a it's just a clay filter and it's
Huh.
called bleaching. I would like the canola industry to change the terminology, say it's filtration. And the
Mm,
other one is in canola crushing, they call it deodorization. Okay,
right.
so the
Never
big
heard of that.
claim of I think my batteries are going dead, but the the big thing in deodorization of canola oil is they say, well, they're superheating the canola oil, causing all kinds of bad things to happen with superheated canola oil because you're converting the oil to other things. You're burning it, right? Well, when they deodorize canola at a canola crush plant, they do it in a vacuum. Did you know that?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah, they heat it with steam to I think about 400 degrees Fahrenheit or no, yeah, I think Fahrenheit. And they do that to get rid of the, like canola is a family, a radish family, right? It's a radish. So they do it to get any taste out of the oil from the canola. They heat it with steam. They do it in a vacuum where there's no oxygen, and when there's no oxygen, you can't burn the oil. So that preserves the quality of the oil, gets rid of the radish odors and any free chain fatty. All oil has the odd free chain of radical free chain oil. It actually gets rid of that. So then you have shelf life and it doesn't go rancid, because rancid oil can be not good for you also. So that's the only two things they do in canola crushing. And people say, well, when do they add the chemicals? They don't add chemicals. That's all they do to it. It's
Hmm.
pure gold. And a lot of people are shocked at that. Most consumers think deodorization, it sounds like you're adding, I don't know, antiperspirant to the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
It did sound
you
nasty
know,
the way they make it out.
so
And I mean,
the
I've seen
term,
these
the,
influencers talking about this.
yeah, so the terminology is incorrect. I correct people on Facebook all the time that say, you know what, we don't add. And the other one is they add hexane. We use hexane on the meal portion of the oil, not all of it. And hexane, which is in gasoline, dissolves the oil out of the meal so we can get more out. But the wonderful thing about hexane is it evaporates, as most people know. Then you heat it and it evaporates off, so there's none left. Well, there's a part per million left in the oil. Do you know what a part per million is? That's 1 inch in 16 miles. So there is literally no hexane in canola oil. But the wellness industry, oh, they're using hexane and it's going to cause cancer. Here's a neat tidbit I discovered. If you fuel your half ton with gasoline on a hot day like today in Biggar, and you get a whiff of gasoline, just a whiff,
Mm.
that's 5,000 parts per million of hexane. That one whiff,
Which I kind of like. I
right?
don't mind that smell, I
So,
just
do you know how much
be careful.
canola oil you'd have to consume to get to 5,000 parts per million? You'd have to consume 5,000 compared to the 1 part per million that you actually get exposed to. So you get more exposed to more hexane in one gasoline fill than you do to if you eat canola all your life.
Do people want
Literally.
to hear this? Are you making a difference, or is it hard to change hearts and minds that are
Well,
people are saying?
they don't understand that the dose is the poison. And, you can talk about two Tylenol curing a headache or drinking a bottle and killing yourself. It's the same analogy, right? Same with crop protection products. Yeah, there's a part per million of glyphosate in my Cheerios. Okay, what does that really mean? It means nothing. And it's been tested and it's safe, and it's safe at those levels. That's why we have MRLs, minimum residue limits, in all our food. When I haul my rye to the elevator, they made me fill out a form. Did you spray any of these products on your rye? Is there any possibility it's contaminated? And if I lie on there and they catch me having sprayed some weird product on there, of course I'm liable for it. So the safety mechanisms built into our food system are better today than they've ever been. And I don't necessarily like regulations, but I think those are good regulations to preserve the safety of our food. And as a result, there is no way you can use any I say to people, test for fingernail polish in your food. You'll find that there too. A mass spectrophotometer can find anything in anything. You look
Yeah,
for it, right?
fair.
So right now, these wellness influencers are picking on glyphosate and hexane in canola oil, and it's a feeble argument, and science will tell you it's feeble, but all they have to say is, well, there's some in there. I don't want any in there. Well, it's not possible to have nothing and nothing. Look at wine when there's a fire and a little bit of smoke goes by a grape. Well, now there's smoke in my wine, right?
Mm.
That's nature.
Are you bullish on the future of farming?
Oh yeah, absolutely, no question. I'm bullish. My biggest concern uh, is who's going to farm all this land in another 10 or 15 years? Because, uh, you know, I even look in my own neighborhood. Once I retire, who's going to farm my farm? Another young person that wants just farms 1,000 acres? Probably not. Probably a big farmer next door. And I'm concerned about the rural communities depopulizing, and some of the farms are getting 20, 30, 40, 50,000 acres. And that I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that it concerns me as that it's nice to see that I believe right now you can be a 3 to 5,000 acre farmer, make good money, have a good lifestyle, live in rural Saskatchewan, instead of that homestead being empty. So that's my what it keeps me awake at night
How do
is
you get young farmers into the business? Is that what we need, or how?
well, cost of entry is an issue. There's no question about that, right? Like, I mean, unless you have children that want to take over the farm and you can afford to transfer it to your children, uh, what's the next step? I had a farmer tell me this. He said, "You know what? All you got to do is ban 4-wheel drive tractors, and it'll fix it all." Right?
Yeah,
Ban a
that would.
4-wheel drive.
Well,
I don't believe that. Every
you
industry is
can't.
consolidating. All
Yeah.
industries are consolidating. People say big ag. Big ag is, well, 89% of all the farms in North America are still family farms. And it will still be the same family farms that are farming today that their children will be farming in the future. It's just that there may be less family farms, but it'd still be family farms. And just because you're big doesn't mean you lose your ethics and your morals, because it's not big ag. It's family farms that give a damn about their soil, give a damn about their children and their relatives who eat the food they grow. So I'm bullish on the fact that it's safe and only going to get better and more sustainable. Uh, I'm concerned about how many there will be and what can society, how many people want to work that hard and take that much risk. Farming is a risky business.
And it's not 9 to 5, like you said.
Yeah, it's a risky business, and I think we're so well off and affluent now that some young farm. I know of a young family that their father's retiring, and they don't want to farm. I said, well, why don't you want to farm? We live in town and we have our day jobs, and we're okay. We don't want that risk, and we don't want that hard of work. So the farm will get rented out to somebody else. And of course, a neighbor probably will rent that land, or their neighbor, or there's farms that are in growth mode and farms that are in go out mode.
Do you think
So
the headlines of the big farm in duress is having an impact on the industry thinking and outcomes here?
I think that example is an anomaly. I don't think that's the norm. That's not necessarily the average big farm. I think that's somebody that had maybe too aggressive of a business plan and got caught. It could happen to me.
Yep.
If you grow too fast, that's one of the risks of growing too fast. And I don't care if you're in the ag retail business or if you're in the farming business. You can still make some bad business decisions, and I don't think that the Manette case is the norm.
Mm.
One thing I do say is if they were that big and buying their inputs for as low as I've been told, getting a better deal because they're big. Well, that didn't work, did it?
Well, I think Robert was making the case no matter what kind of deal you get, it doesn't offset the inefficiencies of being that big.
That's right. And by being big, you can lose sight of, I know on my farm I get to pay attention to only 1,000 acres. I go out and talk to my wheat every day. My wife says that the wheat plants stand up because I love watching, making sure everything's perfect.
Well,
And I have
maybe
an
that's why you got
algorithm.
100 bushels every year.
I do. And you know what? My target yield is 110 this year. It is. It's 110.
Huh.
Uh, I soil test, and I do everything right out of the book, and I wouldn't necessarily advise every farmer do what I do, but because I only have 1,000 acres, I can focus on the teeny little things. This year I've got manganese, copper, zinc, boron on the seed. Uh, I've got, if there's some technology that I believe will give me yield, it's on my farm this year. And the nutrition is balanced right to I don't know what more I can do to grow more bushels than what I've already done or will do in the next month.
Is that strategic coach thinking? Is that what comes out of that? Is that, or was you had to go to strategic coach because that's who you were?
I had to go to strategic coach because it's like AA for entrepreneurs.
True.
It's like
Yep.
AA for entrepreneurs. Yeah, I guess you have to love the business of it. And talking about your podcast with the land thing was a good one, definitely interesting, and it's a paradigm to answer. What will the world look like in 20 or 30 years? And I guess the answer to that is, what do you want it to look like? Because you need to know what you want it to look like. And I think, like on my farm, say I have 3 daughters. One of them farms, but not near where I farm. And the question is, okay, when I retire, what'll happen to my farm? And I have some control over that because I'll probably make sure that some young farmer has a chance you know, to to get it. And that might not mean I'll get the highest price for it, right? So what do I want the world to look like? It'll look like exactly how I behave. And I hope, I know I read recently that Manets may sell off some of their land to restructure and so on. I hope they don't just sell it in one big block to one guy. I hope they consider that their neighbors, maybe a quarter here and a quarter there. That maybe not the wisest way to do it, but how you behave today will predict the future of the world. So you want 10 farmers to benefit if they all get a chance to buy that land, or one big one? And the answer is, one big one might pay more, or one big conglomerate, right? And just saying, the world will look like we want it to.
Were they not having to sell all of it under duress? And that would make it hard to think about being generous.
I don't know about that, but I think it needs to be discussed that why not let a few people have a shot at it? Maybe it's a little more work, but whether it's the bank or the Manets have great people and great aspirations. I'm sorry to see that what's happened to them, because I give them full credit for having the balls to do it in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
some people may be negative about it, and I say, you know what? All the more power to you. It's better to have tried and failed than to have not tried at all. And so, kudos to those people. But and I wish them a success in the future. I think it's worthy of that. If you made a financial, I've been in business 42 years, and I think the banks have called my loans 3 times. So I've been there,
Fair. That's a
right?
great
So
comment. Yeah.
yeah, so like, it probably in the end makes you a better person, although it's a pretty stressful thing to go through. And but I think everybody needs to reflect on how to deal with this particular situation. And I do hope that they really give strong consideration to all the farmers that are near that land, that maybe a couple quarters here and a couple quarters there would be a benefit to Western Canadian as a whole, as opposed to one big, maybe some big corporation is going to come in and buy it all in one block. That would really not make me happy. That would be a mistake.
Mm.
And if I hope the creditors take that into consideration, because it's not just the money. It's not just about the money.
Is there enough capital coming into farming to keep it going and keep it going down the line? And are we going to dry up on capital? Is there going to be
I
no
don't think.
lending and investment?
I think business is business and love is bullshit. And and I think if there's a business case to buying land and you can cash flow it, it's no different than ag retail.
Yeah.
You know, if I decide I'm going to buy another ag retail and there's a risk to borrowing that money, is it the right move? Is there a business case for it? Does it make me more efficient? Does it does it there has to be a business case for any of this. You know, at the end of the day, that's what sustainability is. The first rule of sustainability is you do something and it has to be sustainable. In other words, you have to be able to pay for it.
And
Whether you're
Cassandra's going to
what
keep your business going. She's going to be
Yeah,
taking over the.
there's no
the
question she's doing it. She's taking over. She's basically running the day-to-day operations now. She's excited to do it. She loves doing it.
oh,
Um, there's some our staff love that we're a small company, still a relatively small retailer in a world with I think with the vision that we're an agronomy company that's a retailer, and that's a different story than being we're going to be the biggest retailer in Western Canada. That's a different statement than we're going to be the best agronomy retailer in Western Canada, right? That's our aspiration. I'm not saying we're there, but we drive the business that way. I believe that's what will keep us sustainable. I believe that one sentence is how we will survive as a retailer, and I think Cassandra will will modify and that approach. But that approach is what I believe retailers have to be thinking, whether it's me or another retailer. That what are you going to focus on? Selling volume or selling quality with some knowledge backing to it, right?
is that what you want to be remembered for?
Mm, I want to be remembered for having a business that gives farmers a choice. That there is a choice out there for retails because, as you know, retails are being consolidated, right? So, do you want the only choice to be two large multinational organizations that report to shareholders that are not necessarily farmers that demand strictly money and how do you get there? And that's the challenge, I think, for our big multinational competitors, who I immensely respect. And the challenge is how do they survive? I'm not so sure they're going to survive in the ag retail world without focusing on making sure that the customer experience and the value you add is more than just dispensing a ton of urea.
Mm.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge for us and it's a challenge for farmers.
Well, we covered a little bit of ground, hey?
I guess we did.
We, you know what, you should come speak at the Convergence conference in February.
I'd be happy to. I'm not sure what I can speak about, though. I mean, I'm
Oh
just
yeah, we have
another.
nothing to talk about. 2 hours later, we don't. What the hell are we going to say? What do we? What can we possibly talk about, Dennis?
Yeah. I love agriculture and I love talking about it, and I'm excited to be here. And you ask a lot of good questions. It's an interesting conversation. Not sure.
Oh, it's
Not sure.
great. We should continue it. We should find ways to continue it, and I think you can bring a lot to agriculture, and your voice should be heard. And you did a great job with the book, and yeah, we got the conference coming up and all kinds of stuff. So we will keep in touch after this, and I'm sure people are going to enjoy this episode.
I'm open to it, and I appreciate everything you do, Dan. It's your energy in the ag industry is something that helps keep the conversation going and brings up really interesting subjects. So kudos to you for doing this as well. I think this is something our industry needs is people like you.
Well, then you'll have no problem coming on and being a panelist and going to war, with some of
There,
these topics. I think you'd be a hell of a warrior. I think we need to have more respectful debates. I don't know if you caught the other day with Dallas and Robert, talking about the small town guy with the dwindling rural situation, volunteering on the firefighting department versus, the large landowner who's saying, oh, well, I do good by going to Toronto and keeping the capital flow going. I mean, they had a respectful conversation and there's different camps but we need to have those
Oh, I
conversation.
agree. You know what? When I was in the College of Agriculture in 19, we had debates. Like we had
Right.
every noon hour, we had the ag debates. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd be given even if I disagreed with it, I'd be given the pro or the con side, and we'd debate it.
That's a great
And
skill.
so we've lost critical thinking.
Hmm.
Social media has killed critical thinking because now critical thinking is a one sentence tweet. And a lot of people have lost the art of critical thinking. I was actually reading up on how to be a good critical thinker, and you actually have to practice critical thinking. Like, especially now that I've written my book, I get challenged by the Maha movement all the time. And I'll respond with some critical facts like a good debate would be. And the guy on the other end, I just got one the other day. He's just sent me a poster and he said, "I know why the word retarded remains a word. It's because of people like you." That was his response to.
Yeah.
I wrote
It's crazy.
a 3 paragraph response to why they use glyphosate in the forestry industry, which I know nothing about. But it was interesting to me that somebody was posting they're spraying the pine tree forests around Lake Tahoe, and this wingnut radical was saying, "Oh, they can't be doing this with glyphosate," and of course they log the area, and then to make the new trees survive, they replant, they reforest, but all this other vegetation takes over when the trees are gone, and the new seedlings won't grow unless you control the weeds. And of course, glyphosate's the safest thing to do that, or they
Hmm.
got to go in and till the soil and labor intensive, and it's just actually a wonderful product in the forestry industry. So I wrote a long paragraph about how sustainable this was and what a great thing it was, and that was his response: "You're retarded."
How do
So,
you critical think? What was the steps to critical thinking?
well, critical thinking is number one is to question everything, right? Accept the fact that nothing is 100%. So
Right.
for every argument there's a counter argument that could be plausible. And the question is, to be a critical thinker, you have to say, well, you have to weigh the odds, just like when you make any daily decision. It's like replicated research. If we get statistical significance 95% of the time, or 90% of the time, that's a pretty good odds, right? 10% of the time the product will fail, okay, or the treatment will fail. And to be a critical thinker, you have, if you want to sell, if you want to pitch the 10% of the times it doesn't work, and say it doesn't work, and here's the test case, which is what most wellness influencers use, is they weigh on the 10% of the times things don't work. And a critical thinker would say, well, we have to look at the odds and we have to look at the risk reward no matter what we do in society. The question is, what is the risk and what is the reward? And we have to weigh the two. And it's never 100%. So if we're going to be critical thinkers, we have to say, what rules do we accept in society that makes something acceptable? In other words, if you invent something new, and we want to evaluate its benefit to society, what is the rules we're going to use? 100% of the time it has to benefit society, well then nothing will advance. 80% of the time, 90, what is the risk and what is the reward? And a critical thinker would say, show me all the evidence, both sides. If 90% of one side is got positive things and the other side is 10%, then a critical thinker would say, I guess I'll have to accept that the 90% is probably the safer decision, or the 80%. But I need facts to be able to make that decision. Or, and this was actually pondered. I don't know if you know this. I wrote about this in my book. The OECD, the Organization for Economic Development after World War II, all the nations got together and formed the OECD. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar. No.
Okay, so the OECD is, I think, 138 nations now, and the nations got together and said, we need to agree on certain rules in society after for rebuilding World War II. So if a new thing gets invented or developed, how do we as countries nurture the development of new technology? Well, we have to have some rules. Rule number one is let's have a parameter for evaluating if a new product gets developed, the risk of it to society or to humans. Okay. Whether it's a chemical or mascara, I don't, whatever, right? How do I sell mascara and women are going to put this on their face and say that it's safe? Well, you have to follow certain. So they developed a format and said the format is this. If you're going to develop a new kind of mascara and people have to put it on their face, you have to prove to me that it doesn't cause a rash and all these other things if it's mascara. Or if it's a crop protection product, you have to prove to me that it's safe to humans, that where it's going to end up, at the way it might end up in the environment, that it's not going to harm the fish or the environment, and you have to prove all this. If you can prove all these things, then we'll allow you to register that product as safe for human consumption or safe to be used on food or safe to be used as mascara on your face. Those rules are the same and they're followed by most countries of the world. That what else do we have to say yes or no to something new, right? We have to have a baseline set of rules, and those are the rules that all the countries follow. And of course, in the United States, I talk about this in my book too. They think the world revolves around the United States, and every other country's never invented these crop protection products. When you know that most crop protection products are registered worldwide using a set of rules, and the set of rules that we always go back to is OECD rules of science. And that you tell me what a better way is to approve or disapprove of a new technology like a crop protection weed killer. What else do we have? Your emotion, if you're living in downtown Tampa, Florida, and you believe that all chemicals are bad, well, that's not the way to make a decision. We have to be critical thinkers to make these decisions. So you have to practice. A critical thinker has to be prepared to change change his mind. In other words, if I get in a debate with you about some subject, I have to go into that debate saying I'm prepared to shift my opinion of this after the debate, provided we have rules of the debate, which is what are the rules? There has to be, scientific fact in my mind to back up what you say, and if you have facts to back up what you say and I have facts, then how many are there of each? And at the end of the day, if I have more facts than you do, then I should win the debate.
Do you see anyone coming to these debates with this kind of intent? Because I'm not sure I do.
With what kind of intent?
Well, the intent that I'm willing to change my mind if proven otherwise. I think it's been so polarizing that people are even more, I guess I feel like in the age of social media and information flooding, people are even more entrenched. Like who have you been able to change people's minds about things?
Actually, yeah, with the book. Well, here's the other thing I learned about my book. The majority of society doesn't know and doesn't care. Most people that hear about my book say, "Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate it." 99% of my experiences on my book tour have been positive from consumers that know nothing about farmers.
That's
Nothing.
great. That's
Okay.
great.
Sometimes we believe, because on Facebook you only see the radicals. That's maybe 2 or 3% of the North American population.
Yeah.
Most people in downtown Toronto, you know what they say to me? I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. I believe you. You're a farmer and you're an expert. They actually acknowledge that they actually are willing to accept that I've already researched it. And what I'm adding with my book is a little more security that they're okay and they can go worry about doing other stuff. I mean, that's how society developed. We were all farmers 100 years ago, right?
Mhm.
Now only 2% of us are farmers. Only 2%. So when I go to a dentist, I have a trust that that dentist knows how to fix teeth. I don't spend 10 days picking on him because he doesn't know how to be a dentist. Right?
That's
So,
fair.
and actually, farmers have that privilege. Most people trust farmers more than they trust anybody else.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so if a farmer says, you know what, I spray glyphosate and I do it and I do it, actually, there's not even any seeds there when I do most of it. It's on a pre-burn. The crop's not even there yet. So how that, the odds of it ending up in the food chain are pretty remote when it's done that way. And then we talk about all the other uses of these products and get into the deep, dark things of it. But at the end of the day, most consumers just they're too busy to have time to understand it. It's complex, right?
Is
So
farming or is ag doing a good job of telling its story?
no, that's the number one issue is consumers believe farmers, but nobody else. And farmers are quiet; they're busy farming, and they're quite. Most farmers are shy away from controversy, right? So, and I was one of those guys. I'm not one of those guys, but if I have a relative would challenge me about fertilizer or killing the soil and all this, I would avoid the subject because I didn't want to get in an argument, and I was embarrassed to be doing that. Farmers need to step up and tell their story. They really do. They're the spear of the head, is what I've learned. That their voice is all they need to say is, you know what, I do this, I've evaluated it, I would feed the food I grow to my family. And most consumers say, okay, good, I'm happy to hear that. Thanks for telling me. And 95% of the North American population would be happy with that. But they can sit on the sidelines. It concerns me that they're sitting on the sidelines. I was on doing my book thing with a group of farmers, and I was doing my book signing, and a farmer came up to me and he said, "God, you're doing great things with this book. Good luck with the rest of it." And I thought when he walked away, I thought that's why I wrote the book is I don't want farmers to tell me good luck with my book. I want farmers to pick up my book and every opportunity that they have, just like your anhydrous thing, to challenge the statement, they should use it. They use it as an entry level to have a good conversation about not what's good or bad, but about what their story is and what they're doing. The earthworm story is one of my favorites.
Tell the earthworm story.
Okay, so uh, so I thought about this. So I had a lady say to me, I forget where the event was, maybe it was in Denver, and she said, "You're killing all your earthworms. You're using fertilizer and anhydrous and chemicals, and it's killing the earthworms." So, having had that happen to me before, I said to her, instead of saying, "No, I'm not killing my earthworms. Here's the scientific research that says glyphosate doesn't kill earthworms." That's not the answer she was looking for. That used to be my old answer. And you know what my new answer is? You know what? I thought about that myself. So I went out one day and I dug a cubic feet of dirt out and I took a screen and I screened out all the earthworms on my field on a square foot, cubic meter, a cubic foot. And the book of the book of composting would tell you that healthy compost has 7 earthworms per cubic foot. Okay. I don't know
Okay.
where that came
That's
from,
facts.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
so I said, okay, if this is true, then I hope I have 7 earthworms per cubic foot of farm soil. So I go out and I count my earthworms, and it was in July. It was hotter than hell. I told my neighbor, let's go. He helped me do it. We took a case of beer and we went out. I said, let's go count earthworms. I don't know. Other people were at the lake. I was counting earthworms. I found 1 earthworm. Well, that upset me. I thought, oh, maybe I'm killing my earthworms, right? So then I got reading about the earthworm. A critical thinker would not just quit, right? So I got reading about earthworms. Well, in July, they don't like the warm soil, so they go deeper than a foot. So if they're
Interesting.
in there, they're deeper. So I get reading, how do you get earthworms to come out of the soil? Well, I mixed up Keen's yellow mustard powder, 2 or 3 tablespoons, put it in a 1 liter Pepsi bottle with water, shook it up, and I poured that yellow mustard solution into the bottom of the square cubic foot hole. and within 2 minutes, 6 earthworms came out
The
because
other six were missing.
yeah, it irritates their skin. I should have videoed it. I didn't,
That's
but
crazy.
they literally come shooting out within 2 minutes. Six more earthworms come popping out because they were down there sleeping or whatever. And so now I have 7 earthworms per cubic foot of soil. I have so many earthworms on my farm, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I was digging for how my seed depth the other day, uh, and there was probably 7 earthworms per, in a 5 by 5 swipe the soil aside to dig for the seeds. Unbelievable amount. Here's the other interesting thing that I said to that lady. I have 7 earthworms per cubic foot of soil on my farm, and I've been using glyphosate for 40 years. I've been using anhydrous for 40 years. I've been using chemicals, fertilizer, synthetic, everything. I have a good crop rotation. I zero till or minimum till. I have really good healthy soil. So then I tested it with A&L Labs. I have a soil health test that would blow your mind. I have really good soil. So to answer your question, am I killing the earthworm? The answer is no. And that is a true story. So I don't know what other guys are doing, but mine are alive. Now here's the final story. Did you know that earthworms are an invasive species to Western Canada?
That's crazy. Come on.
It is true.
Huh. Where are they from?
The earthworms came over in the ships that came to the eastern seaboard of North America because they ballast the ships with dirt from Europe.
Mm,
The earthworms were in the ballast of those ships.
come on.
When those ships decayed and broke down on the eastern seaboard, the earthworms escaped. And they then moved into North America. Before that, there were no earthworms in Western Canada, none, zero.
Bloody earthworms.
So I said to the lady, if you're an environmentalist, you have to figure out how we kill this invasive species,
Yeah.
right? It's crazy. And it's a true story. I got researching this.
That's so
The
interesting.
earthworms were not alive anywhere there was a glacier in North America. The glacier killed them all.
Fair. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you'd have to
So
go
it's
like to Alabama or
yeah,
somewhere lower to find
yeah, yeah,
earthworms.
yeah. But of course now they're all over, and I love my earthworms. I'm happy with them. But it's not an interesting story. And I'll tell you what, that diverts from any big argument because I have a real case study of what happened on my farm, and I use all these products, and I have live earth. I urge farmers, go count your earthworms. Don't hide from the subject. You're killing your earthworms. Well, go find out if you're killing them or not. A critical thinker will will reevaluate and examine and be prepared to change your mind. Like with science, I mean, we've learned with science. We used to summer follow. My dad used to summer follow. That was the way to farm in the 60s, right? The best farmers had the blackest summer follow
Yep.
because it's all we knew. And so then I came farming and I had to change. My dad said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to start continuous cropping. Well, wow, you can't do that. That's a terrible way to farm. But so we learned and we modified. And Mintel, when it came in, well, most of my customers thought we were nuts when we started zero till direct seeding, right? We took a lot of flack. So over time, we changed our minds, and those are critical thinkers. And it takes time for critical thinkers to change their mind and absorb and think. And I think it's like eating an elephant 1 tablespoon at a time. Each little story means something. At the end of the day, those people have to think, well, gosh, anybody in agriculture has kind of a moral compass, and I wouldn't ever grow something on my farm to hurt my children or grandchildren. Why would I, right? And so
Do you think part of
uh,
the issue is anybody can say anything online and there's no consequences? Like you won't get punched in the eye, you won't get chased off the stage with a good debate. Like you don't have to know anything about anything to make any kind of comment online right now.
that's part of it. But if you're a farmer and you read a post that you disagree with, you can do two things. You can disagree with it and do nothing, or you can reply to the post and say, this post is garbage. I'm a farmer and this does not happen. That's all you got to do. That's one little thing you can do on a daily basis. You see a post you disagree with, answer it and say, you know what, you're wrong. And if I'm wrong in challenging you, then you challenge me back with some real facts, and maybe that's a some activists aren't worth arguing with,
No.
but the 95% of the consumers in North America are worth talking to, and they're not the ones on Twitter making negative remarks about farmers. They're busy doing the things they do in their lives, raising children and taking them to hockey and baseball and everything else, and the privilege that we give them by growing safe food is they get to do all those other careers while we grow the food. And there's only 2% of us that can actually answer that. That's the problem, is numbers. 98% of the world doesn't know what farmers do. Only 2% do. We got 2% of us telling the real story, 98% not knowing what the real story is. That's the problem. There's not enough farmers to talk to the consumers about this.
I love it. I think you did a lot of good, and I hope everybody feels encouraged to tell our story. And when one person does it, it helps everybody else, right?
Yep.
You think farmers feel a little bit more confident from what you've done to tell their story? Have you seen that?
I think, I think, I think, uh, I think mostly it's been frustrating, that not to a large degree, but I also know that it takes time, and it's 1 inch at a time. We can all make a difference 1 inch at a time. We're going to change the world and all the activism, maybe not. Is it good that we're being challenged on our farms? Yes, it is. Is there a miracle product that's going to come along and change the whole world, that we're not going to be farming without crop protection and technology? No, there isn't. Uh, and I always say you got to be careful what you wish for, because if you're a consumer and you think the whole world should be farming without pesticides and fertilizer, then should be careful what you wish for, because you will have mass chaos.
You'd be hungry.
Yeah, and world starvation.
Yeah, I just think people haven't experienced that for so long. But I think
Yeah,
these shortages around the world here, with what's happening geopolitically, could change the sentiment towards fuel and like fuel and food.
yeah. Gosh, I even see Europe is considering revisiting the GMO thing, eh?
I talked to Dr. Sylvain. He's coming on the show, Charlebois.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
said that the UN has come out saying that basically climate change has all been dramatically overblown. Is basically a farce, and he's the only one who's talking about it. So he's going to come on and debunk some of this stuff that we hear about: the gene editing, the climate change.
yeah, yeah. Oh, wonderful. That's good. Yeah, he's a wonderful man. He's good. His word means a lot.
He spoke at the conference last year, and it was exceptional.
Oh,
It's really
wow.
good. Yeah, I think you should tell your story on the stage. I think it'd be great. We should talk more. Are
Yeah,
you
we can
doing
talk
any
about it.
keynote speaking or anything like that? Or
I have done some. I have been focused on the consumer market.
yeah,
So I'm going on to in July, I'm going on to CTV Hamilton for the morning show.
cool.
I've been on CTV Vancouver, the morning show.
That's fun.
So most farmers don't see me doing what I'm doing with my book, because I'm specifically targeting the consumer audience. I did my talk last July on the 5 myths in 5 minutes on CTV national television in Vancouver. And
Impressive.
that's the best response I've had to book sales. It was all right downtown Vancouver,
Yeah.
and morning television in July in Vancouver. I don't know who's watching television, but it's not farmers, it's consumers,
Yeah.
right? And the response to that was it's on my trustyourplate.com, that I think part of it, I'm not sure they allow us to post news. That's kind of annoying. If I
Isn't it?
do a news, if I do a news telecast, I can't repost it on Facebook.
I'm
I've
with
done
you.
C I've done CTV Vancouver. I've done CTV KRTC, I think they're called, in Hamilton. They invited me back this July. And I've done Fox News in Denver, the morning show. Fox. I've done two Fox television ones in Denver. That was really good. Uh, so that's where I'm spending my time. You probably won't see some of that is on trustyourplate.com. You can go there and you can see a lot of the podcasts I've done are on that website.
Convergence is about food and health and wellness and agricultural production. So it seems like a perfect mix. And maybe you're preaching to the choir, but you're giving the choir the tools to preach to others, like a good preacher should.
Yeah, and I'd probably want to design a talk like that to be catered to your goals as well, Dan. And so that would require a lot of work to rewrite I don't like doing the same talk. I never do the same talk twice,
I believe it.
or I try to avoid it.
Well, this one was totally different. Even more where it's going to go. It's definitely original. I think farmers, though, learned a lot just about, wow, lots of specifics, but also just ways of thinking.
Yeah, think about how you think, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, from a strategic coacher, I think you've got that down. Well, I'm
Good.
proud of you, man. Very proud of you. And I'm very honored that you took the time to talk to me.
I'm proud of you too, sir.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Keep it up.
High fives. We're going to see you around the circuit. We'll do some more.
Thank you there.
Okay, you take care. Have a great night.
Okay, bye.
Bye now.